I want to mention, oh, I have to do, we have to press OK. Um, so I want to also thank you very much for so many people coming out to listen to this conference. And also, this conference is in recognition of World Elder Awareness Day, um, which is very important. It's World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which was yesterday, in fact. We didn't do it yesterday because we figured it would be better for you all to come today. But it is in recognition of this day. Every day, our organization and other organizations try to do something special on this day to remind people, make them aware of mistreatment of older adults, etc. And since ageism has been declared as being mistreatment, a form of mistreatment, I thought today we would talk about ageism. I thank Iman, whom you see here above, is also going to do the technology for me, to put on slides, to do all the things that make me nervous. And so basically, if you have any issues, you can't get in or whatever, or you can't get out, please contact Iman. Iman will also check the time because I could go on forever. And so Iman is going to tell me when it's about 45 minutes. At the very beginning, I would prefer that people don't ask questions or interact, because the second half will be the questions and then interaction session. If you think you might not remember your question as we go along, you can either put it in our chat box, or you could just take note of it by pen, and then we'll have them at the end. I might not be able to answer them, but we have such a very qualified group here that I'm sure somebody else might be able to answer. And then the idea is also not just to talk about ageism, but to share about what it is. And I find very few organizations really talk about what we can do to prevent and intervene. And so I actually did a little bit of research myself to see what the results of these studies say about what we should be doing about it. Because when I give my workshops, and I've given around 40 workshops altogether in English across the whole of Quebec, I was asked actually by Maria Amsalak, whom you can see at the top, who was a member of the board and the group of OVS. So it's basically sponsored by the Observatory on Aging, and I agreed to do English workshops on ageism in the first place because it's a very important subject, and they were doing it largely in the French sector. But what I liked about what they were doing was that they had made a whole pamphlet. I don't know if you can see it now. Yes. Of comic strips. The first one was in French, L'ageism en clin d'œil, and I thought it was quite a nice way to do it because these are complex issues, and basically it was explained through comic strips. And many of you have been in my ageism workshop, so you've seen them possibly, or seen at least a few of them. But I think it's a very good way of explaining what ageism is in an understandable way. And I even have given this workshops a few times in classrooms with children or young people, and they like to look at the examples that we have there and then talk about their own examples and issues. So this is what we're going to do for the next 45 minutes, and I'm going to use a set of slides, and then after, I hope we'll be able to talk about what we said, ask our questions, etc., and maybe come to some solutions that you can envisage in terms of doing in the future. One of the things I enjoyed is in the 40 plus ageism workshops that I've given, that some of you throughout the province of Quebec have actually set up your own follow-up projects to spread more awareness. And so I think this is extremely important and extremely useful. So I am the animator only for the English workshops, and we had Lucy Delwide. I don't know if she's here, but she was the animator of all the French workshops initially. We had people who were so interested in the subject of ageism that we had to increase our animators. And so now we have, in the English, we have 2, and we have 3 more in the French sector. Thanks to the Observatory on Aging, we are doing a lot of awareness. The other thing that I liked about the work that we do within the Observatory of Aging, it was actually set up by Dr. Davignon many years ago. Some of you might know, he was a famous gerontologist, and he at the Université de Montréal, and he also was a victim of ageism, and this is why he founded the Observatory on Ageism, and basically set up all kinds of conferences to begin work on how we could counter ageism and what it was about, etc. And there have been several projects already looking at different aspects of ageism. In the workshop, we try to give kind of an overall look at it. And it was fairly simplistic at the beginning. It was called Ageism at a Glance. We were very lucky to get a grant from CADA, the Quebec Ami des Aînés, Quebec Friend of Seniors. And they did sponsor the first documentation, the Ageism at a Glance. And since then, the organization was able to get a second one from the same organization, CADA. And so we've been able to have a further look and to be able to advance our awareness campaign a little further. So can you put the next slide, please? Iman, are you still there? Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about many things, what we know a little bit about ageism, definitions of ageism. Obviously, there won't be a complete look at anything, but just to give you an idea about these different things. Why are we talking about it right now in Quebec, in Montreal? Why, and also in the world? Why did the journalists and social media discuss ageism in the media during the COVID-19 pandemic? A little bit about the impact of demographics in Canada and the EU and their influence on ageism. Observed examples of ageism in diverse areas. Examples of positive and negative issues in the workplace, particularly in the workforce, which I'm going to talk about because we can't talk about all of the areas. And what interventions prevent, reduce, or counter ageism in research and in our observations. And lastly, will be the whole section on questions, interactions, and discussion, where you're going to put your input and questions into this and try to find some good solutions. So these are 3 pictures I wanted to show you. The middle one, the larger one, is the group of Observatory on Aging, on Ageism and Society, I should say. Basically, you saw Alida, you see myself, and all the others who form an important part of this committee who work very hard, actually, on trying to spread awareness about ageism. I've talked a little bit about the organization, and Alida is the person who's in charge of the whole project. The project itself, if you turn to the picture on the left, is has Iman, the picture of Iman, who is the coordinator of our project. And the other people are Dr. Martine Lagacé, who the person in red a little bit in the background, as she often is, but she is one of the leading researchers on ageism and she is at the University of Ottawa in the Department of Psychology. And at the other part, we have the whole recent study on mistreatment of older adults. Since I mentioned that ageism is a part of mistreatment, and that today we're also looking at or in recognition of the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, I thought it was important to tell everybody, in case any of you have not read and seen this study. This was an important new study on mistreatment in Quebec, which actually interviewed over 8,000 people. I was part of this study in terms of being on the committee which helps to advise, the advisory committee, and it lasted for at least 2 years and was published in 2019. So I urge everybody to look at it because it has new information. It does show that actually mistreatment, the rate, which used to be 4% of the older population over the age of 60, 65, and now it's basically increased to 5.9% or almost 6%. So we haven't, as people have become more aware, we could say that probably people are more aware now that what it is, not necessarily that there are more people who are treated, although there are more older adults. Ageism is also not only about the old. So we're going to talk about this in a few minutes. Although most of the documentation, most of this projects have actually been against older adults versus against young people as well. But we have to also talk about ageism in general. So I have kind of said a brief summary already of the previous work done on ageism by the observatory, and that I was asked. I actually was the president until very recently. Now we have Linda Ferlina, who's in the audience here, has taken over as president of Handicap Life Dignity. That's one of the organizations that I have been heading to try to help people living mainly in long-term care homes, but also people who require long-term care. And it's more of an advocacy organization. So you may have also some of the people from our board are here, and ageism and mistreatment are also very much part of our organization in trying to fight ageism, etc., and mistreatment. Carter, I mentioned, the two very large projects for the organization from 2021 to the present, and we're still continuing and finishing up our second large project in which we've produced this new comic strip. If you take a look at it, the picture of it. Now we've changed the heading to Ageism Explained, Where and How Does It Happen? So I hope we have copies now in English as well as copies in French. And I hope that all of you will take a look at this. It's not perfect, but basically it does give good examples and simple examples of what ageism is in all the different areas, etc. So we just finished this, the English version, and so I'm quite proud of it, and we'll be able to give these out to organizations so that they can have an English copy of the explained version, which is better and more thorough than the old version, which was not as well, quite as well done. We've tried to improve it because of our grant, and we also are continuing our workshops, so we haven't finished yet. There are so many organizations and not just organizations, but older adults, etc. Because the main thrust of our projects have been to spread awareness among older adults. We haven't done a very big job yet among younger adults, although I have done 2 or 3 recent workshops. But in the past, I have done many intergenerational projects when I first heard about ageism. So I will mention those a couple of times throughout the work that we're doing today. We've done, I think we've done over 100 workshops already in French and English, which is quite a lot, and I'm quite pleased about that. And I know of at least one very large project also, which is coming up very soon and is well on the way in the Cumming Center. So I would like to mention it, and if people are here from Cumming Center, they might want to talk about what that's about during our interaction part. Also, we offer a lot of information and conferences, etc., that have been done by other people. For example, Dr. Lagacé, also other people have also, other scholars have done other what we call conferences on the website. So you might want to consult our website and look at that if you're interested in a lot more information about it. Is there a reason, Iman, why you turned off the slides? I'd like the next one, please. Double click. Okay, thank you. So what's the objectives today? To spread awareness about ageism to the English-speaking community in Quebec, to recognize examples of ageism against older adults and for all ages, to have a deeper understanding of why ageism is recognized by the United Nations. By the way, I should say that you don't really have to take any notes, which is a bit of a pain for everybody, because it will possibly be put on YouTube, our conference, and also will be on our website after. So you'll be able to get all the slides and all of the what I'm talking about there as well. So United Nations a few years ago basically said, declared ageism to be a form of mistreatment, and in their they sent to everybody, many countries, they sent basically information about how to go about doing awareness campaigns, etc. Also, the European and Canada have been doing a huge amount of work. I'm going to talk about that as part of elder mistreatment, etc., which exists all over the world. Also, I want you to understand which interventions have been shown through some scientific research to have some success in preventing or countering ageism. Obviously, we don't have time in our little amount of time to go through everything, but I will just point out a few which seem to me to be the most important. And lastly, to discuss together the possible interventions we can do in Quebec right now to fight ageism in our communities. And this is why I'm happy to see many organizations here today, people who represent different organizations, as well as different individuals who can put in their 2 cents. And you, I'm sure, know more about it than I do, some of you, so I can't wait for that discussion. Next, please, slide. Okay. What have we learned about ageism? So there are many definitions of ageism, not only one, and some have only referred to stereotypes about older adults. But ageism is claimed to be the most tolerated prejudice as compared to other discriminating attitudes and behaviors such as feminism, racism, and sexism in Canada. So this is basically why I think it's very important that we spread the awareness and not tolerate that there be ageism anymore. So there are clear examples in many areas, such as, and I gave a list, and these are all included in our documents: education, politics and policies, healthcare, environment, workplace, media, beauty and beauty products, art, literature, technology, humor, transportation, theater, etc. And probably everywhere they are. And also there is self-ageism, where we actually promote ageism against ourselves and we internalize ageism, etc. So we'll be talking about this a little bit too. A possible cause of ageism has been explained as fear of growing old, fear of disability, and fear of death. This has been mentioned in a few of the different studies that I've seen, but more possibly needs to be done in the future in terms of whether or not this is the explanation, etc. I call this FOGO, and everybody always laughs when I mention it. And there's even now there's on my Facebook actually, there's actually examples of FOGO and how to tips against fear of growing old, etc., which I thought was quite interesting that it came up fairly recently and has some interesting information on it. Most research in the past has related to ageism in the workplace. A lot, because I think people really understood it very much as having older workers or being older workers who were having great difficulties getting jobs when they were over 64, 65, or even 50, depending on the type of work that they're doing. And this is why I'm going to be relating a little bit more today in this talk about some of the findings that we got in a recent forum in Ottawa University about ageism in the workplace. There's a lack of research which is focused on how we can counter and prevent or reduce ageism in our society, nor how it's shown among diverse cultures and people from diverse generations or cultures. So I think we also need to focus on this a little bit also. Next, please, slide. Iman, thank you. Definition and types of ageism. So, as I said a few minutes ago, that there are a lot of different ones. It was initially defined, everybody probably knows this who's in the audience, by Dr. Robert Butler in 1968 as a process of stereotyping and discrimination against individuals based on their age, involving systematic negative stereotypes and attitudes and practices against older people, manifested in various aspects of society, including healthcare, employment, and media. So basically, this is where it started. And when I first started to know about ageism, basically, this is where I got my information from initially. And I thought at the time that it was basically against older adults in society. In terms of what it is. And only later on did I realize that it's not only against older adults, but against the whole society. So my definition of ageism is the negative stereotypes with discrimination or prejudice against individuals or groups based on their age. So it can be from children to teenagers to high school students, etc., to any people can be a victim of people against their age, discriminated against because of their age. It refers to stereotypes. I think everybody knows what a stereotype is, but it's basically how we think, what we believe about age. Prejudice, how we feel, how it makes us feel etc., and discrimination, how we act towards other people and oneself based on age. So that's what I think is the main definition now, but it does apply, I'll remind you again, to children, youths, to anybody of any age could be said. Either you're too young, you're too old, or whatever. Types of ageism are, it's been divided into different sections, and there may be other definitions too, but these are the ones I'm using for today from the studies. Interpersonal ageism between individuals. Self-directed, that's what I often call it self-ageism. And this is also where you use a stereotype or you hear a stereotype continually about your group and you internalize it. In other words, it becomes part of what you think about old people, about aging, about ageism, etc. So it's the internalization of a negative stereotype or attitude toward aging or your age group could be also. And so all kinds of strange things are being said or thought about implicitly or explicitly about old age or old people, etc. Institutional is where it applies to social norms, practices, and rules which are unfair to older adults. We talked a lot about what's going on in our institutions, etc. Ageism in the workplace is probably the area, and also workplaces, of course. Ageism in the workplace is probably the area where most ageism has been observed and talked about. So there are two main areas. It's also been mainly observed as against older adults and recorded against older adults. And also some of the solutions have been referred to against older adults. So basically, there has been a huge amount of work done in that area, but not so much in terms of the other areas. Next, please, slide. So why are we talking about ageism right now in Quebec so much? And it's particularly because of what happened in the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic in long-term care homes in Quebec and Canada in 2021 to 2023. This is very important because of the amount of people that died. Over 5,000 people died in our long-term care homes in the first wave in Quebec from COVID or mistreatment because we were not prepared. And this was, the journalists began to talk about it nonstop throughout the pandemic, etc. So these were some of the things that were said, that ageism is mistreatment and doesn't respect human rights because society is not treating older adults correctly, the way in which they should be corrected, and it's a respect of their human rights. They weren't allowed, for example, to go out of their rooms in some of the long-term care homes for over 100 days. Anyway, we had extensive coverage by journalists and media during the pandemic, and this brought the whole notion of ageism, I think, to the public, and not just to a few of us who were gerontologists, etc., and geriatricians. So with that, and I mentioned this book by Andre Picard, which I bought right away, called Neglected No More, which records the situation and also very clearly that what happened during the pandemic was an invasion of human rights, a lack of respect of human rights, but also that it was mistreatment and not just we didn't have any choices, blah, blah, blah. But basically, it should never happen again. Caregivers were removed, as we all know, from caring for their loved ones in the homes from one day to the next. and many loved ones died alone without their caregivers being able to even say goodbye. These were things that were unacceptable that happened. There was a huge absence of resources to care for all those sick from COVID. And I don't think people even realized actually how much caregivers actually did as volunteers in terms of helping the persons. And many people died, we found from the coroner, from starvation and malnutrition, which is direct mistreatment, but did not necessarily die from COVID-19. And finally, a need was expressed in view of all that was going on, not just in Canada, but in all countries who suffered also at the same time, that awareness of ageism must be spread internationally. Andre Picard still has an ongoing commentary in LinkedIn, etc., that I follow all the time. I find that he's a very good columnist about healthcare, etc. So the rest of you might want to look at that too and read the book. Next, please. So ageism applies to people of all ages, not only older adults. I want to really stress that point because we haven't really taken much notice of this, and I think that we need to look a little closer. One thing that I found in the research that I did recently, which surprised me actually, that Butler stated that even children as young as 4 years can experience stereotypes about their age. And they can internalize cultural values, both positive and negative about their age. So it seems difficult to believe that, but and then I thought again about one project that I did, and I want to give you an example of this. One of my many projects was about making a film between children who were between 9 and 11 in the community and seniors. And before we started, we asked basically the children to write down what for them was old age. And so these were some of the answers that they gave, which kind of, at the time I was quite young, by the way. It wasn't because I was an older adult that I did this. It was in 1980s when I did it, when I was running a home care program for in CLSE Metro, downtown Montreal. So these are a few of the statements which really kind of stuck in my mind. Old age is full of wrinkles. Old age is being lonely. Old age is going to the hospital. Old age is not having any teeth. Old age is when you can't take care of yourself anymore. Old age is being sick. Old age is being very poor. Old age is when you think they're dead, but in reality they're sleeping. Old age is sleeping most of the time, and old age is being weak. So that was the first encounter that I had with what children were internalizing and thinking about old people, which kind of is a little bit of a shock. Later on, we did a very extensive project in 5 high schools in Montreal with our organization, NDG, Community Committee Against Elder Abuse, in collaboration with McGill Center for Studies on Aging. And we did the same thing. We did a questionnaire at the beginning, questionnaire at the end of our project. Part of the project was to give knowledge about aging and ageism, and to also give the experience of seniors working with young people, basically, because these were high school children. And but we still asked them what their ideas were about aging were. And this is the report that I got. Some of the things, I won't say it was everything. Older adults experience memory loss. Older adults are lonely and isolated. Older adults do not wish to participate in family society. Older adults no longer contribute to family and society. Older adults face physical and emotional hardship. Older adults usually live in nursing homes. Older adults do not remain physically active, and older adults usually have to rely upon government support services and are a drain on society. So you have to ask yourself when you see these, even this is a long time ago, this was in 2001 that I did these, but you have to ask yourself, where are these images coming from? And this is what we're talking about today, that these stereotypes are seen by young people, but they must hear them from somewhere. They're not hearing them necessarily from, partly they might have grandparents and they think that that's how it is, but many of them do not have grandparents. So they don't necessarily have positive images about older people, etc. So I found it quite striking. And that's what we mean when we're talking about people having, these people are going to grow up, or probably possibly do grow up, and we are a part of them, thinking stereotypes about their age, about old age, about ageism, etc. So I think that's an important reason why ageism applies to everybody and not only older adults, because we have the same kind of stereotypes actually sometimes about teenagers, etc. And some of those came out in the groups that I have given, or about young people in general. Or I just read an interesting survey from UK, which was given, no, from America actually, from the US, which was given to a very large number of people who were in the communications industry, of public relations particularly. And it showed that people, women, felt that they were being discriminated against at the age of 40 in their job because of the way they had to look and appear, etc., and if they were competent enough or skilled enough to continue. So it's very much what we're seeing and what we're seeing on TV, what we're seeing in the media, what we're constantly hearing everywhere from our workplace, etc. What are those stereotypes? That's what is the cause of ageism. But we have to look at why we're thinking about things this way. So some ageism stereotypes also can be seen as kind or positive, or it's called benevolent. And one of the things that a very simplistic example, I like the fact, because I'm perceived as an older person, or I have white hair. It's not even that I'm perceived as an old person, but I have white hair. So people are told they should stand up, and particularly young people, but many people are told they should stand up for me on the bus or metro. I don't actually have any problems standing in the bus or metro, and I take the metro and bus all my life, very often. But there's a very big difference between now and before. So this is a simply, which is actually what you would call as kindness versus being a negative thing. But there are many examples like that too. However, in the workforce regarding recruitment and hiring policies, research has shown, and I saw some specific studies that have shown, that people are not always treated equally. And I want to mention particularly Dr. Martine Lagacé again and her colleagues, because I think they've done some remarkable work in Quebec particularly, but also in Ontario and different, in Canada, I should say, regarding recruitment and hiring policies. And research has shown that people are not, they found that in one recent study that more women faced lower response rates than men when applying for jobs. And I found that interesting because somebody in the last workshop that I had given, and it was a lady, uh, brought this up as an example for her that she found it very humiliating, devastating that after she was 64, 65, she applied for a job and people didn't even bother to answer acknowledge that her application, etc. Not just that she was refused, but not even acknowledged. And made her feel invisible, etc., and disrespected. So these biases tend to exclude rather than include groups of people from the workplace, even though more older workers may be needed now and in the future because of societal and economic issues and demographic changes in the future. And I'm going to mention a few of these next. Could you, next slide, please? So we were invited by Dr. Martin Lagacé to a very good, excellent forum at Ottawa University recently, which was looking at inclusion and exclusion in the workforce, and whether or not it was ageism or not, etc. What was ageism? And the main speaker there was a very qualified and interesting professor by the name of Franco Fracciaroli from the Department of Psychology in Trento University in Italy, who talked about the influence of future demographics on the on the workforce in Europe and Canada. From many studies in this forum that was organized recently in April of this year, I think it was, and we also heard many other things about what was going on in the workshop. But one of the things that he mentioned was because of the depends, he said very clearly that in Europe and in Canada too, dependency ratios will increase. And the present one person who is dependent to 5 workers has already increased to 3 to 10 workers and could double if the increases continue at this rate because of the demographic changes. And if the age of retirement remains 64 to 65 years, and in Europe, you already know that France, for example, most of the countries have put up their retirement ages so that people are expected to work at least and not get pensions until at least 67. And I just heard you probably heard too, that in Denmark, they are the oldest retirement age group. They have put it already up to 70 years, so that people will be expected to work until they're 70, which will decrease this dependency rates. Because I remember when I first came to Canada in 1967, that constantly hearing that older adults were a burden on the in terms of healthcare, etc., and so it's the same thing happening again, but even more so because of the numbers of older adults now in the population increases, and life expectancy for men and women in all of these countries, in Europe and also in Canada, will probably increase from right now the average around 83 to 90 years. Eventually, and it will increase gradually, but in 2065, it's said to have actually, I checked it even in Quebec, to 90 years. So we will have an older population. There will be an extension of work life in the future. That's for sure. Pretty sure. I mean, that's one big thing that people are predicting and expecting. The question remains, are there limitations, and if so, what are they for older workers? And this is an interesting issue to discuss maybe later on. Next slide, please. Iman?
Yes, you cannot see it?
No. Oh yeah, stereotypes and
Yeah,
meta-stereotypes. Well,
it
I
takes
just
time
want
for
to, yeah.
you. There is it.
I meant, sorry, that I mentioned this because basically not everybody really understands what meta stereotypes, etc., are, which are perceived as ageism and stereotypes. I did give you some simplistic examples of children, what they think, if they think like this, that's a stereotype that they grow up with, etc., possibly, unless there are reasons for them not to think like that. So these are perceptions that others hold about their social group, that some believe other people think about their group, perceptions and beliefs that cause stress, anxiety, or a threat, and how individuals internalize social stereotypes, which is self-ageism, can result in lower learning and development of infrastructure, social infrastructure particularly, and a lower development of infrastructure. I think it was supposed to mean. Um, what's interesting about this is that everybody has stereotypes about different things. If people say enough the same thing about groups, whether it's on TV or they always show, for example, young people to be very slim and affects teenagers a lot because they look at TV and 95% of the shows show beautiful people with blonde hair, with very slim, etc. And this is a stereotype that young people would also think, well, we're supposed to look like that, and it's caused quite a lot of eating disorders, etc. Because it's internalized, basically, that they think that this is how we all have to be. Same with older adults. We're not all the same. Each one of us at any age is an individual. And there are many, many, many of us individuals and individualistic. I was called, since being about 3, I think, Johnny Opposite. And that describes me because I was always kind of looking at the opposite of what everybody else was looking at. So maybe I was kind of more into analyzing and thinking about these things than other people. But in general, I kind of always felt bad for not being part of the group. And so we tend to kind of like people who are part of a group, etc. Anyway, that's just to talk a little bit simplistically about stereotypes, how stereotypes really affect us in a major way, and we don't really ever think about that or look at it. And how can we change that? Next, please. So in the workplace, a few things. I might skip a couple of things later on. Stereotypes regarding one's age group versus one's skills. We should be thinking about skills in the work situation and not necessarily what we think about their skills are. So this could be explicit and implicit. At the very beginning, when technology started and everybody was doing everything on their computers, some people had never learned this, especially the older generation. And basically, so people sometimes thought, well, old people don't know how to do technology in general. I remember actually when I was first appointed as a professor in University Laval, um, I was sat at the desk, and in front of me was a computer, and there was no writing notes or doing all the stuff by hand. And I was kind of a little shocked by that because I'd never had a single lesson in how to use technology. But anyway, I just had to manage, and I'm still very limited, but basically, um, it it always causes a bad feeling for me if I have to do certain things and I don't know how to do them, I haven't learned them yet, etc. And some people are better at certain skills than others, etc. So there are all kinds of things involved in technology too. Gender issues are prominent. For example, what's interesting about gender is that males and females have different types of ageist problems. So females in male-dominated workplaces are sometimes their knowledge and experience have been found in recent studies to be dismissed. And this is considered ageist. There were differences between white workers about privileges, some white privileges, etc., and blue-collar workers who could be passed over for promotions exist, and they could cause economic vulnerability. So there's also economic factors that are involved in ageism myths and beliefs. Greater health risks were found to exist for blue-collar workers, which you can imagine because a lot of there has been, this is a very overall thing, there has been a link between when people are victims of ageism and health, physical and mental health issues. This for me was a very significant thing because I wasn't sure if it had actually been scientifically proved that this was it, but apparently there is a big risk for certain people, and particularly for blue-collar workers. Dr. Lagasse found out. Positive factors in the workforce have been found also. These are a few things. So we want to mention the positive things as well as the negative. Basically, when there's a variety of age groups, including older workers, as well as the other age groups, this is appreciated and seems to have success in companies that have been evaluated as using this policy. When there's more of a balance in social relationships, this is what they found a lot in Europe, in the European and the Canadian studies. And the workers have shown more capacity to adapt and to cope with stress. And there's less conflict resolution in the work milieu and in work-related disputes where there's a variety, for example, of different generations working together. So that I found very positive. Next, please.
Daphne, you have 10 minutes left.
Thank you. There was a very large study, I have to mention this, by David Burns, etc., suggesting that there's a strong link between ageism in the form of negative stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination of older adults and risks to their physical and mental health. Well, I just mentioned that. So you should really read this study because it's not only David Burns, there's a whole list of researchers who have worked with him, but very excellent study, which really, from the US, which tells a lot of interesting things like this. So that you can refer to that as a reference to the physical and mental health links. Ageism is seen in many forms, such as discrimination in the workplace, healthcare, and in nursing and long-term care homes, which is what didn't surprise me, because when there's discrimination, it's usually worse mostly among the most vulnerable people, whatever their age. Many awareness programs and projects have been initiated, but little on interventions has shown to be effective in combating ageism, nor have they been scientifically evaluated. This is one of the big problems, that we don't scientifically evaluate things. We don't have the same definitions, etc., so that we don't have a lot of evidence about what's successful and what isn't. This one study did a meta-analysis, which means they analyzed 63 projects with a total sample of over 6,000 participants. And the outcome measures which were used were attitudes towards older adults, accuracy of knowledge about aging and older adults, and the secondary outcomes were comfort level with older adults, anxiety about one's own aging, and interest in the field of geriatrics or gerontology. So those are the different things that they looked at in this large study. Next, please. We have to go faster. Yes. 3 types of interventions. This is the highlight of this discussion now. 3 types of interventions are found to be successful in the Burns study. One is education regarding accuracy of knowledge about aging and older adults may remove the fear of aging, which is one of the thought causes about ageism. This is very important. The second is intergenerational contacts, obviously. If you don't ever see different generations together and they don't relate to one another, they're not likely to be necessarily positive toward one another. So basically intergenerational contacts, such as facilitating exchanges with different generations to provide solidarity and not competition. I think this is important because basically these are the ones that we've done the most projects on, from what I see, particularly in Quebec and also in Canada and even elsewhere. We've tried to get more intergenerational projects, etc. And the third one, and I thought is probably the most important, is a combination of education or knowledge projects and intergenerational contacts. And so this is why this is important, is because it's not enough to just get the generations together, but also to give education about aging, etc. So that apparently these had successful effects on the attitude, knowledge, and comfort of the participants. But the bad news is that in all the studies that were done, there wasn't really an effect, a positive effect on the anxiety of the individual's own aging. So that basically we were looking at generally, rather than are people still anxious about the aging process, etc., or their own aging. And not necessarily the older they got, because that would have been easier to understand maybe. Ageism in the workplace in Canada and Europe. So I just want to mention this. This is the second. There's extensive work now about the workplace in Canada and Europe by this professor that I mentioned to you, Italian, and his team, who set up an international network. So if there are any researchers in the audience and that you're planning on big stuff, there's already 70 international scholars. And in 2025, a new journal was launched that we can send articles to. If we do any articles that are scientifically written about or whatever. Work, Aging, and Retirement. The editor's called Mo Wang. And there are some positive indicators of improving situations of older workers. And I want to mention these because to not make the presentation all black. What do older workers appreciate is skill variety. They like to have not only to do one thing, one skill, or they like it when there's a variety of skills which are appreciated. Autonomy is appreciated. Feedback helps to understand the social situation that they're in. It has to be good feedback, obviously, and clear so that they know if there's a problem, why there's a problem, etc. Task boundaries need to be clarified. And broad-scale education is valued. Awareness of the value of seniors should be emphasized in order for them to be integrated or kept in a valuable way, so that people don't say, oh, that person is no good because they're old or too old to understand or to learn new things. Rights of workers to be upheld also is an important issue. the rights to fair pensions, etc. Next. I think we're getting to the end now, which is good. There's one large Canadian study of ageism. I ask everybody to read this. In 2022 was led again by Dr. Martin Lagacé for the Federal, Provincial and Territorial Seniors Forum regarding the social and economic impacts of ageism, because people are so worried about projects which might incur a lot of increased budget, especially in healthcare, etc. And what was interesting, the exact same three successful studies that I mentioned in the Burns study were cited as effective in the study. So I'm not going to repeat them because we already did that. But the knowledge ones and the etc. and the intergenerational projects and most of all the combination of knowledge plus intergenerational context. But there were a couple more things that were added in terms of the workforce, were provision of more space to accommodate more workers and opportunities for all ages to interact within and outside the family setting were examples of inclusion and were important. Next. I'm going very fast. So we're getting to the end now. So we're getting to our discussion. So how do we fight ageism? What were the suggestions from our forum on exclusion and inclusion in Ottawa? I'm just going to mention three main things. There's a need, and how do we do this need? To make a shift in our interpersonal and societal perspectives about older adults and the aging process. That refers to older adults and the aging process, because that was the focus at the time of this forum. However, we could say the same thing about ageism in general, that the whole perspective of age has to be looked at.
Melissa is continuing our Pride Month celebration. And how big is success? National Geographic's new documentary, Sally, highlighting Sally's incredible journey, is streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus today. And in fact,
Yeah.
tomorrow will feature
Layla?
LGBTQ plus Pride Month celebration. Take a look.
Layla? I stopped her.
I think it's the mute. Okay. Can we go back? Because we're at the end almost in terms of just our discussion now anyway. Can we go back?
Mhm.
Okay. So that was the first thing that I mentioned. The shifting our perspective has to be done, because basically it's all about perceptions, how we perceive people, etc. Older adults, aging and the ageism process, etc., the aging process. So how do we create also a positive work environment was another thing. And some of the things were said before that were positive. So obviously that would be a bit of an answer to that question. And the third one was, what and how can we create positive attitudes towards aging and older adults? Can we do that? And how do we do that? And it has to be done on a large scale. So how do we do it on a large scale? And can we afford it? So that's that. And there's one more slide.
Yeah, the last one, I think.
I have to mention this one because I really liked, and I found it last, but this is a book on ageism by Becca Levy in 2020, if you look it up. Very, very interesting. And she did a study as to whether ageism amplifies cost and prevalence of health conditions. And she highlighted the importance of integrating an educational component in the school's curriculum, all the school's curriculum, related to age-based stereotypes and the aging process. So I don't know whether or not people agree with that or what you think of that, but this is what came from the US. Shifts also called for a large shift in public awareness to change the mindset, and I think that's the one that we're particularly trying to do in Quebec, but I don't know how, if it's called a large shift in public awareness. It's quite small, I think, initially. And large educational campaigns is the last thing, and massive programs in targeting managers and healthcare programs will be costly, of course, if we do them really across the board, but possibly save money if the physical and mental health of older adults was improved. So, I mean, that's kind of the argument to do them, which I kind of liked. Next, I think this is the last. I have an example, but now I think I'm going to stop because we've used our time and let everybody know, ask their questions and discuss their own examples. But I did put in a little example from our project in Handicap Life Dignity. So can we stop now and discuss questions, anybody, or discussions? What can we do to focus on interventions and prevention of ageism?
Yeah, Daphne, I think we have a question in the chat from Catherine Bradet. Good afternoon to you. Within the concept of ageism, do you consider it positive discrimination when someone stands up to give you their seat on the bus, or is it a cognitive unconscious bias? I would like your opinion. Thank you for your presentation. Sorry for the translation, but thanks for your understanding.
You're asking me? I think it's is it positive? Well, it's what they call a benevolent thing, because it does state on all the transportation and the buses and the metro, etc., that there are certain seats that are given to people who are, I don't know if it says older on it, I don't think so, but it says who need it now. So that's a good result of not in, well, I think it is a bit of a bias, yes. I think we are all prone to ageism and ageist perceptions of things. And first of all, it's like with mistreatment in general, we have to look at ourselves and what our biases and misperceptions and myths are and stereotypes. And we only do this if we're aware that it exists. So, yes.
We have a second question from Marguerite.
Thank you for your question, by the way. Marguerite, where are you?
Yeah, it was the question of Catherine, the first one, and this one is Marguerite. Why is the French word vieillissement and the English word ageism? It seems to me that the translation from one language to the other is not accurate. Can you respond to Marguerite about this comment?
Well, I think in Alida, what do we call ageism in French?
Agisme.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not.
It's not ageism, it's aging.
Yes, that's it. It's not. Ageism is one thing, and aging is something else.
Exactly.
Aging is le vieillissement.
Yeah.
Ageism is l'agisme, what we're talking about today.
Yes.
But
In our French,
I understand, but why is the group called Observatoire Vieillissement et Société, while Daphne calls it Observatoire Aging and Society?
Mhm.
That's what bothers me.
It's an observatory on aging and society. And you question that. I don't know. That was the name given in 204. I don't see, I
No,
don't understand your question very well.
Ageism is for vieillissement. It's the translation of
the
vieillissement.
translation is Observatory on Aging and Society. Is the name
Okay,
of the
I made a
organization.
mistake.
Oh, okay,
Because
thank you.
No,
Because
it's
it was-
because
Okay, you're
Daphne.
allowed.
No,
You're allowed.
Daphne is because
Maybe
you
I
said
made a mistake.
observatoire. You said You said
I said
observatory
ageism.
on ageism and
Ageism.
society. That's
No,
what
it's
bothered
on
me.
aging,
Okay.
Aging and society. You were right.
Okay, we have another person.
Sandra?
Eduardo,
Sandra.
here.
Oh no, we had Eduardo.
We have two persons before Eduardo. We have Sandra and Linda, and then Eduardo.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sandra?
Yes, hello. Mine is going back to the seat, giving up your seat on the bus. It refers to personnes à mobilité réduite. It doesn't talk about aging.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
That's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
But why do I look as if I have mobility problems? Was my point.
If I may, but they portrayed an older person.
Yeah.
With a cane or a walker or something.
Yeah.
It's out of being polite, the cordial thing.
I think it's nice that we have good values anyway. I think
respect.
yes,
It's out of respect.
It happens systematically to me versus other people who might be the same age but don't have white hair. And I don't walk with a cane, etc. So, it's interesting just as a kind of simplistic example.
We have another person, Linda.
It was my turn.
No, there
Eduardo.
was two persons
Is there
before.
two?
I think
May I?
Eduardo was there.
May I?
Yes.
Okay.
I
thank you very much, Daphne, for the richness of your conference. I want to leave aside the intellectual and get involved with the emotional. I've heard your conference, like when I read a good book, when the author goes in the direction of my feelings and on the things I would like to be reading about. And I praise your conference because all through it, you inspired new questions, new angles of seeing the issue, and that's you widened. But because I stressed on what I was feeling about your lecture, and well, that is the way in general that I use, and I think we should use to confront ageism. We are the persons with the best depth of character because we learned it through our lives, and we have to be strong in that position and teaching, but not from the intellectual only, but on the wideness of our vision. No? For instance, when they give me a seat in the bus, I check the person. I continue looking at him, and whenever he or I decide, get down, I thank him. I stress on the not on the education, but on the interaction, love interaction, and so many other things. Well, I could go on, but I don't want to take so much place. I'd be getting in afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eduardo,
Thank
for
you.
your comment. We have Linda, and then we have Alida. Linda Forlini, your microphone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay. Thanks very much, Daphne, as per usual. Great presentation. We've worked together on certain things. I think what also about aging is that it's very complex, and sometimes it intersects with other types of discrimination as well.
Yes.
We talk about ableism and people who are disabled and that suffer from disabilities, rather. And I think the media has a role in the way this is portrayed. In the recent election, the American president, he was referring that this term of dementia is always bandied about with older people. If you forget a word, if you do this, it's a disservice to the disease itself, and people suffer from it. And it's absolutely libelous. It's horrible to people that are fine, but they just respond slower and or they just have a moment. And I think that's one of the issues. And our study ourselves, Daphne, you and I, we conducted a study, the new study that we conducted, and you had mentioned COVID. I think what you had said that ageism, there were not enough resources for people with COVID. But also, I think what we found is that what I find is partly ageism and ableism is that there were no resources prior. And you were saying about things that need to be done. And I think, well, one of the things, because this is uppermost in my mind, is that people that are in nursing homes, there's not enough done for them, and it's a long-standing prejudice that's based in ageism, and I think that's one of those things. And finally, I just wanted to say that I could go on and on about workplace, and I think older people are underemployed, even if they do get a job. But also that the media has a role to play in this, and how can we get through to the media and start taking them on, calling them to task on the way that they come out with these prejudices. Anyway, those are some of my comments. And thanks again. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne. Then Alida. Alida, you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Again, Daphne, it was very, very interesting, both theoretical and practical. My question is, I want to have your comments on the links between, we call it auto-agisme or ageism internalized, et la bienveillance. It's a term, I don't know what the English equivalent is, but I find lately that what I read often comes up. Pour contrer l'agisme, il faut développer la bienveillance. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I think we talk a lot about in another project that we're doing. We made a film about mistreatment called Mireille's Time, and we talk about the conditions that people have, the bad conditions that people have that they'd like to change in nursing homes and long-term care, etc., and how they can go about it, and particularly to find the solutions. And we talk about bienveillance is very difficult to translate because we have an English version of the film, and there isn't an exact translation. I use the word a lot, well-being, but it's also kindness. It has a whole part of kindness within the word. So what I think what you're saying is that it's very based, the whole idea of mistreatment is based on our cultures and what we learn in terms of cultural values, etc. And why am I probably working with seniors today, or my whole career has been in the area of gerontology, is because my mother, from the age of, I would say probably 5, was taking me to do the shopping for people who needed it all the way down my street. She was presenting me. I had to go and visit then later on all of the seniors from the institutions or people that we knew, organizations who needed help in their homes. So I think those values are very much inculcated in us as families, as parents, as spiritual places that we go to, churches, synagogues, etc. So I think there is a big issue in terms of why we become ageist. But I mean, I think we've also been very focused on age, and we are very focused on age. Everything is kind of about age. The first time I meet anybody, they always ask me, how old are you? I mean, why should that be so relevant, how old I am? Does it make a difference if I'm 80 or 85 or 75? And that's, how has it happened? I really don't know. I think we want to know when people were born. I know I'm actually married to somebody who was a different culture happens to be from Morocco originally. And they are constantly having debates about how old they all are. And it can go on for quite a long time, the stories to produce how old they are. So we've always been focused on age, but not necessarily did it have a bad connotation in the past. We respected, to some degree, people as they got older or etc. And we respected age more. So I think it's what I said before. It's about human respect and human rights also.
Mhm.
So that's a big answer, a little bit of an answer, but it doesn't really answer your question. Maybe Valerie has some ideas as a
We
researcher too.
Yeah, we have Karen that said in the chat, the offering of a seat on the metro to an older person is what I was referring to. It's from a place of respect.
Yes,
That's what we were saying
yes,
about.
exactly. It is. I think that's nice. It's a cultural value. I think that in Quebec we have good values to some degree, and we're lucky to be, part of a. But I think our society has changed a lot in the past, and we've developed good and bad values. So it's
Nowadays,
very complex.
Arabic people are more gentle in that regard. May I say something? May I?
Yes.
Iman?
Yeah, we have Cathy. We
Oh,
have
sure.
Pardon.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you can add something. Cathy, can you talk?
Hi, yes. So I have a question, but I also wanted to say something since the topic of like sharing a seat keeps coming up. So I'm an OT, but I also have a background in psychology, and we learn a lot in our social psychology classes about like different forms of like benevolent prejudice. There's many different forms: benevolent ageism, benevolent sexism, benevolent racism. And while societally, they are seen as signs of respect, they do a lot of times reinforce negative stereotypes, which was already somewhat mentioned in this presentation. But that's the only thing I will say. Is
No,
that
that's good.
while it is seen as a respect and like societally it is accepted, it still like reinforces a lot of times these like harmful stereotypes that like, oh, older adults are weaker and they need this seat, where that's like not necessarily the case. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. My question actually was you had mentioned like 3 types of like successful interventions, and it was specifically the third one that I had a question about. Talks about a combination of intergenerational contact and combining that with education or knowledge projects. I was wondering if you could give an example of what like those types of projects might look like.
In fact, when I think back, I did a project called Joining Generations in 2001. And that was basically the kind of project, I think, that falls in. That it was only done on a smaller scale because we're talking about 5 high schools and classes, etc., and difference. But what I think the idea is that you kind of there's an intergenerational contacts. We did them with the school classes, so it was part of their curriculum. Then we also had some lectures from people from McGill who were experts on, health care and different issues about aging. And so they gave 3 different lectures after, as well to the students, as well as us having kind of an informal generational contacts. Also, there were varied seniors. They weren't all high intellectuals. They were it was a mixture of types of seniors within our groups. And we actually measured it. But I think giving knowledge about what it's like to age, what kind of changes can we expect, we used to call it normal aging and not normal aging. I mean, I think we gerontologists also we went to an extreme in aging. We used to talk to people about aging gracefully all the time, and people are still talking about aging gracefully. And I used to say, what does it mean gracefully? I mean, but there are facts that definitely happen in terms of the aging process that we have. I used to call it, because I used to give classes and I invited these experts in, and they would call them changes. What is it that change in most people's body as they get older, etc. So those are kind of things that we gave information about. And then we would have fun activities as well with the seniors and the young people, so that they could see that there were fun things. There were things that were just serious, and there are other things that were just kind of enjoyable. So I think part of the problem is that when we do these projects, they're for like 10 sessions or whatever, and we do the before, we do after, and then after 3 months, we kind of followed up. But the big problem is that you don't have enough time, and you can't take much of the curriculum, the classroom curriculum. I don't think most of the curriculums really have anything much about aging changes, even now. But I think that that's what they mean by knowledge, from what I see in the research, that they're actually giving knowledge about what we should know about changes and stuff like that, and how to deal with. But there's also the whole caregiving issues. Many of these young people even are doing caregiving things for their older people, and how do they feel about this, and what can they expect? Caregiving is as much of an issue as the changes in your body that you have to, and values is the other piece, that we don't all have to be exactly the same, that we're not the same, blah, blah, blah. I think there's so many ways in which we can give knowledge about the whole thing. But the shift, and I think that the medium is one of the biggest things that's grown the most in technology, and I think they're giving the wrong messages. I think that's a very major thing. Because I mean, people in everybody's family, I'm sure, have these eating disorders.
Enter your PIN, followed by pound.
As children. And older people, we have our own also fears.
Enter your PIN,
because of what we see on TV very often. How come somebody would ask me, for example, why I don't bleach my hair? Why do we want to look different from how we are living? These kind of discussions, are interesting.
Daphne? Yeah, time flies. So yeah, we still have 2 interventions. We have Eduardo, and then the last one will be Sandra. I'm so sorry because we are.
Go for it then. Well,
yes.
Schopenhauer and Nietzsche, harsh thinkers, used to say they believe in death and nothing more. And they used to say that we need a mask to face life in order to live it nicely. And I don't like the intellectual angle that you're putting in the discussion, but instead, I would like to stress on the passion that we live, the passion that Jean Calment demonstrated. She was so personal that she outlived everybody, and within this sequence, passion, especially for beauty and all the niceness that the senses interpel us with, and passion and character and destiny. We have to deepen in our character and be free, without so many considerations. We fear the danger of ageism instead of imposing the strength of our age. Please, we have to open the discussion into that light, fundamental light. Well, I have many other things but
yeah.
Thank you.
That's a whole nother lecture.
Yes, it is. We can plan it.
Thank you, Eduardo. We will take the intervention. Sandra, and then we will.
Yes, hello. I belong to a group. We meet every Tuesday, and they've called it Aging Triumphantly. They bring
Yes, I
people
know about that. With Miranda.
here, and I think it's a real good name for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing that up because I think sometimes, you know, I think what I like about Miranda's program is that she goes, it's not all serious and intellectual. It's a lot about dancing and having fun and excitement. So it shows kind of, it really appeals to a lot of people, but it also includes, like I have been a couple of times to the organization and talked about ageism, and it's been fun too. And there are different levels at which I wanted to make this a little bit more to the theory because we never talk about the actual studies and what the studies say. So,
Sure.
and I think it's important that we evaluate what are the keys to success in terms of if we want to get rid of ageism. I don't quite agree with Eduardo. I think we need to stop ageism. I think we need to try and prevent it.
Yeah.
But I think this is why we need to debate more and talk about it to see how we can do it best.
Yes.
Because it does have bad physical and mental effects on the people who are victims. And I don't think as a society we like that or we want to continue that. And the more older people, we know that there are going to be a higher percentage. In 2035, there's going to be 25% of our population will be older adults. So it's more important to discuss now than wait until there are more problems. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody so much for attending because honestly, I'm thrilled with the discussion. I love the discussion, and you brought so many interesting points, some that I hadn't even thought about. And I really think we should continue to find ways to discuss and to do intergenerational type things. And I'm also happy that we're not all of us very old who are here, that we have mixed generations and young people who have joined us as well. So thank you again.
Thank you.
You'll find a lot more things on the website of the observatory on aging. And I think that I'm also involved in the Cummings project, so you'll be hearing and getting some invitations about that if anybody wants to mention it. And they're doing a film which is quite different from what we're doing in OVS. And I think it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be in September when it's launched. So I think that's another huge piece which will change people's thinking. A lot of work has been done there. And Handicap Life Dignity, we're an advocacy organization, and usually you see me very emotional. I am a very emotional person, Eduardo, and I'm usually fighting the government to try to change, etc. So I think there is that piece of it that we all have to do as well. Our best to
Thank you.
make things better.
Thank you all for your presence. Thank you all for your presence. And maybe we will see you in another presentation or conference. We hope so. So I will leave you and let maybe Alida add something.
Thank you, Iman. I've seen you in your last film.
Oh.
No, I just want to thank all of you, I mean, for being there. Yes, I know, definitely thank you. But for us, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's a first. And I think we should plan for another one to hear about you and to hear what you are doing in your own project. Anyway, thank you again. And don't forget, I think our email address, if you can put it. So if you have any questions, Iman will answer them, will answer you. So again, thank you for this opportunity for us, the observatory, to get to see some names and faces. So again, thank you, and I wish you a nice afternoon. It's very sunny outside. We should enjoy it.
Maybe
Thank you,
also
thank you.
people could send their examples of what they're doing to us also by email, because all of you, I think, have or most of you have access to my email or to OVS email.
I
So
just added it. I just added the email. I will
in the
email
chat
you
box.
on the chat.
Yes,
Yeah.
since Daphne mentioned if what you are doing, send an email to Daphne. But what Iman is planning for the fall is to have a special special numéro spécial de Gérofa on ageism and what some of the projects are, so we could integrate them in this info letter. It's going to be from our at this time it was mainly for what's happening in the French sector, but we'll be pleased to add what is doing in your sector, the English sector. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. So
Thank you.
Very good.
Bye. See you.
Okay, Iman, you have to close. You have to stop the